Doing today? Welcome to my photo editing live stream where you can submit your images before the stream starts and I edit them here for you live. And this is always sort of just a real-time training or demo of what DxO Photolab can do and also give you an idea of my workflow for DxO and editing photos in general. So I'll sort of think out loud as I go along when I'm editing the photos to kind of give you my thought process and hopefully ideas on why I use certain tools the way I do. And I do have, if you're new to DxO Photolab, I do have affiliate links down below with a 15% discount code for new users of DxO. So if you've ever bought a DxO product in the past, unfortunately, the coupon would not apply, and I wasn't able to get them to give me a coupon code uh, sort of across the board. I'm gonna try again, but yeah, right now they're not doing it. So the best time to buy DxO or upgrade is usually on Black Friday. The last 2 years we've seen a 30% discount, but if you can take advantage of a 15% today, I think it's worth it at this point in time. If we were closer to like August, September, maybe even October, I'd say maybe it's a better idea to wait. And that's usually when they release a new version of DxO as well. So we might see Photolab 9 come out in about 5 or 6 months. And all that said, uh, let's just get into the editing. And I see a lot of you are here already. Thank you so much, John and Robert, Paul. Good to see everyone. Robin, Larry. Okay, I'm gonna try and I have my air conditioning running in the back because this office gets really warm with all the computers and everything on. But it's actually quite nice out today, and hopefully I can get some yard work done without getting a bunch of ticks, man. Last time I did yard work, I was picking ticks off me for like a week. Okay, uh, good. You can't hear the AC. That's good. Uh, that means all the noise reduction is working. All right. I have DxO. I need to adjust my screen to make the sliders and everything larger. And I see one more came in. Let me download that one. Okay. All right. So I got Roberts in there. And close these other windows, adjust. My display. Okay. All right, looking good. So we'll start here with one from Larry. And I have the DxO Optics module already loaded for this one. So we're at G9 Mark II with the 100 to 300. Very nice combination. Beautiful image. Okay. Um, so this is very much like how I shoot, where I like to fill the frame with the subject. So the first thing I do when I look at a photo for editing is I consider the overall composition, if I want to do any cropping or straightening horizons. And then I also look at the exposure. If I need to make any sort of global adjustments there, but the exposure is good. The composition is very tight already. And I think we're good. And then the white balance as well. So these are kind of the core global things I consider before I actually start doing any uh, actual editing of the photo. So what I might do here is there's just a little bit of a distraction down here on the bottom. So I'm going to maybe just crop that out. And then I'm looking at the lines and the corners. Um, this area is a little out of the focal plane, so the point of focus seems to be right here. So let me start with just a basic preset, which is noise reduction and sharpening. So we got rid of the or optical correction, so we get rid of the vignetting, and then we also get the lens sharpening that is in the optics module. So we're looking good here. And I'm going to, this image is really compressed, so any cropping is going to have a major impact. I'm just this little bit at the bottom, and then I might come in right in here. I don't really need this left side either. So now I'm thinking about the balance of the image, both in terms of just the weight of the things in the scene and also the lighting. So this image is very, very heavy on the left side for the lighting and also for the subject matter. So it just feels a little out of balance for me. But I think that's crop is okay. Now I got this piece of light here. Let me see if I can just get that out. So I always like to look around the edges and see if there's anything distracting. So like those little highlights that were down here were kind of distracting. I've kind of lost my corner a little bit. I want to get this line up here to lead into the scene a little bit. All right, I think that works. So we've cropped in just enough so that we don't take away from the scene, but then we got rid of some of the distracting elements. And let me bring this window back in so this is more centered. So I think we're good here. All right, so what I want to do is really bring out the textures of the rust in the metal here and this logo. But let me see if I can just adjust these highlights a bit. And I want to do it locally because if I pull the highlights globally across the entire scene, it's gonna, well, let me try that first. Over here, let me just see if I can just do a little pull. Yeah, that works. I think that's enough. I don't need to do that locally. It's still a little bit hot right here. So let me just work on this part locally. I'm going to tighten up the Luma mask just 5 points and just pull that in a bit. Okay, now this window here, I want to bring out the cracks as well. And let me work on the texture in here. So I'll just do that kind of globally. Now, when I'm working on the texture, the reason I'm doing it locally here, rather than doing sort of a global attempt, is I don't want to add texture to the background here, which is fairly soft. I want to keep that as soft as possible. I may even go in and soften it more with some local adjustments, but let's just work right in here. Okay. And I'm going to pull these back 5 points just to have it spread the mask a little more evenly. And to add texture, I can do it a couple of ways. Really, with micro contrast, I can probably crank that all up. And then clear view also does kind of a nice job, but I have to be careful with clear view so I don't clip any highlights because clear view basically increases the contrast and it may push the highlights out, but it looks like it's holding. Let me just see. Yeah, that looks good. Okay, so I'm going to emphasize. Let's see if I can go down here. There should be a sharpening. I'm just going to just crank up the sharpening again, just to make it more crispy. I think that's good. So uh, let me work on this side window now. So I'm going to make a new control point, and just in here, maybe just add some clear view and some micro contrast, just to make that a little more specular. Let's see if I'd add some regular no, let's let's just raise the shadows a bit and then push the highlights. Just to bring that in, I want to balance the exposure a little bit because it's so dark on on this side. Okay, that looks good. And okay, now as far as the color goes, the white balance seems to be pretty good. I don't know if I want a little warmer, if I can add a little more nostalgia to the scene. So just give it a little different feeling. Not that the white balance was wrong before, but I use white balance sometimes to kind of change the mood. So I just want to give it a little warmer feel. So we're at 53. Let me go. I usually like to stay within 500 Kelvin because if I do too much, it might be a little too much. So I always look at where I'm starting at 53, and I generally try to stay within 500, and that adds just a bit of warmth. Yeah, so I think that's good. And I think I want to bring out the reds a little stronger here. This is more of a brown, which is kind of a yellow, but I can just use the eyedropper. I'm going to select this. Yeah, it's more of an orange and red. So I'm going to spread this out a little bit or feather this a little more into the reds and yellows. Uh, and then I'm going to go back to my local adjustments. So now that color's been selected because for whatever reason, the local adjustments don't have an eyedropper. So if I want to select the color for a local adjustment, I have to go back to this color panel, select it in here, then I can go back here. Let me see if that's stuck. Yeah, it's stuck. Uh, so what I'm gonna do, yeah, so that's the one I want. I'm just gonna push the saturation on this and make it a little stronger, maybe a little darker. And then I can also shift it if I want it more red, like that, or go more yellow. But I think I'll just give it a slight shift to red. And let me do something with this bluish color as well. So I'm going to go back to my color panel, use my eyedropper to select this blue area, and go back here, select that same control point, and maybe I can make this a little more teal or a little darker blue. And now let's go a little bit teal. and just brighten it up a little bit. I don't think it needs to be any more saturated, but I can just give it a little bump. All right, now the last thing here in the image is this background. It's already pretty soft, but I think I can soften it a little more. So I'm gonna just pick an area in here. And let me make these a little smaller. So I don't want to take away from the crispiness that I just added. And I'm just going to pull the micro contrast backwards. So I would do the opposite. I can just make that a little softer, just like that. That might be too much. I think right about there looks good to me. And the brightness is not bad. I'd like a little more speculars in it, so I'm going to try highlights and just bring that up a bit. Now I'm going to go to the midtones. And whenever I'm adjusting like local exposures, I like to start at the extremes, either with the blacks or with the highlights. And then I'll start working my way into the middle, when I'm going for contrast. But I think that works. Let me just see how that's, yeah. I like that because it was a little bit too dark in the background for me. All right, I think I'm done. The only other thing I might consider is, these kind of things usually have, tend to look good in black and white as well. The only thing I would do if I wanted to do black and white is I'd probably just add a little sepia like that. We can go with a black and white version with a little sepia added, and I would definitely pull the blacks in globally like that. I think that looks good for if I'm going to do sort of a monochrome. Maybe back off the sepia a little bit, something like that. I think that looks really good, but uh, in this case, I did all that work on the color, so I'm just going to go with color. And I think I'll leave the sepia toning in there. It's the sepia is a little bit different than changing the white balance. Um, I think right about there, and we'll call it there. So let's do a quick export of this one. And I don't need to resize this. I was working on some other stuff. Okay, that looks good. So sRGB, preserve color details, little suffix DxO, and we'll export that. And then we'll do a side-by-side comparison. See what we have in the chat window. I can't quite read it. All right, so let me reset this. And we'll do a comparison with the output. All right, so here's my edit here on the left. It's a little dark. Let me brighten this up a bit. So go back. Just do a global exposure boost. You can try smart lighting. Yeah, smart lighting's pretty good. Maybe a little more. Okay, that works. So I'll export this. All right. Okay. So here's my edit on the left, and there's the original here on the right. So the key thing for this image to me was getting rid of these really strong highlights in here. I probably should have clipped this a little bit, like adjusted that a tiny bit, but This was the most distracting element in the scene. So just cropping that out a little bit, and then this left side, I don't think was really needed because the subject is here. And this is very much like how I would shoot it personally, is filling the frame with the subject. And then all I did with the editing is basically exaggerate some of the colors and details uh, to, oops, let me see. Let's just do kind of a rollover. And I think that looks pretty good. Okay. Uh, excuse me. Let's go to the next one. And this one is from William. And so we have a landscape, seascape-ish with, is that a volcano? Or is that just a cloud formation going over this little island? That's kind of cool. So my first impression here, let me just do a quick optical noise reduction thing. The horizon feels a little bit off, even though I think the horizon is correct. Sometimes the way the land wraps around the sea makes you feel like the horizon is a little crooked. So even if the horizon is perfectly level, sometimes I still tilt it a little bit. And there's not much going on here in the foreground. I don't think there's anything significant here. So I'm going to probably crop out most of the foreground and just work with the sky. I think the sky does have a lot of nice drama in it. But let me work on the horizon just a bit. I just want it to feel straight. I think right about there, right about there. Yeah. Okay, that looks good. And then I'm debating a vertical, or let me just see what a vertical looks like real quick. No, maybe a 16 by 9. Just work. How about a 16 by 7? I'm just watching my corner here in the left, but also in terms of balancing the composition, I like this foreground to be about a third. Then we don't really have a lot of depth here. Even though this is a very deep picture, I'm trying to balance the foreground, midground, background, but it doesn't really apply to this image. But I think that looks pretty good. All right, let's work with this. I may change the composition later, but I think I'll just start here and just get a feel for the drama in the sky. And I think I can extend this down into the water. So we'll use a clear view to kind of bring that out, and then a little micro contrast. And I don't know if I should warm this up globally. Let me just try locally warming it up a bit. See where we're at. So we're at 56. I may have to go quite a bit warmer. Like I said, I normally like to stay within 500 Kelvin. We're at 56. Let's try 61. Let me go back to the global white balance. And just warm this up about 500. So we were at, again, 56. Let's try 61. Yeah, that feels about right. Maybe a tiny bit of magenta. Nope. I think the magenta is fine. Let me go back to the local. I may have to push the white balance a little more than I normally would. I really want to bring out a little bit of color separation as well in here. Let me move this eyedropper around. Let's see what that does. Not much. Okay. All right. I think that's not bad. I'm going to back it off a little bit. Maybe around 60. Yeah, right about there, about 67. So about 1100 Kelvin. And foreground is about right. I might highlight this fallen tree here a little bit. What I'm going to do, I want to tighten up the Luma mask a little bit on that control line because I'm losing a little bit of the softness. I kind of like this little bit of haze we're getting here on the land. So if I tighten up the Luma mask, I'm going to affect this area down here a little bit less and only the sky, as you can see. So I'm just toggling the mask on and off here, and I think that works. So let me just do a quick comparison. Okay. The horizon is still, let me come back to the horizon a bit, just a little bit more. Okay. All right. What I might do now is actually, let's try a local control point. Oops. Let me expand this out a bit and just raise the brightness over here. Let's try midtones. A little bit of more contrast. And again, a little more warmth right up in here. Okay. So it's a little warmer here versus over here on the right. And then just a little kiss of warmth along the edge there. I like that. All right. So let's do a little bit. Let's concentrate on this foreground a little bit. See if I push the highlights a bit. So I'd like some of this to stick out a bit. I'm gonna zoom in. Right in here, a little bit more here. Push that a little more. There's really nothing on this left side. It'd be nice to kind of just kiss a little bit of light over there. I think what I need to do, maybe another control point, and just kind of push the light on this side a bit. A little bit more. Okay. And just a little more contrast. And then on the right side, Just gonna cool it off a tiny bit. Give it a little more green. All right, let me look at this composition again. I need to, I hate to come too much. Okay, now I got a little bit of a rock, more rock here. There's a little bit down here too. Let me see if I can grab this one extra rock. Okay, and we'll just do a little dab there. All right, let me see where I'm at here. It's interesting, the light is actually pretty strong on the right side. See if I can bring this out a little bit. I'm gonna do some very, very small. Let me see if I can do a very tight Luma mask. Maybe tighter. I don't normally push the Luma mask this high, but I want to just kiss the light a little bit more in these areas and just have a little bit of warmth peek through. So I'm going to push this. Okay. I think that's it. So I'm going to export this one. And we'll do a side by side. So reset. Uh, okay, so here's the original on the right. And then here's my edit. So I put a lot of work into the clouds because that's where most of the kind of drama of this scene is at. Uh, and then I wanted to add a little more dynamic range to the scene with the lighting, but it has to be kind of motivated a little bit, right? I don't want to just, increase the contrast globally. So that's why I kind of did it in pieces. I did this left side a little bit, and then a little bit down here, and then tiny bits inside of here to kind of keep the top part balanced. And then little kisses of light here on these rocks and logs or whatever these things are down here, just to kind of accent the foreground a little bit because the foreground is very, very plain. So just adding some little accents like these rocks or stones, whatever these are, I think helps. So if we just do a rollover type view, and we didn't need to keep all of the clouds. I mean, a lot of the drama is, there's a lot of drama here already. So I think this crop, a 16 by 7 works pretty well. It's a little bit warm overall when I do this. I might back the warmth off a little bit if I were to continue editing this. But yeah, that's the original. And then there's my edit there. I think that came out all right. Okay, let's do one more and then I'll check on the chat section. We have one here from Lasse. So So we'll just apply a basic preset, again, optical corrections and noise reduction. And again, we have a lot of foreground here. Even though this is a very compressed view, this is a 40 millimeter, 80 millimeter equivalent. There's still too much foreground. Usually when you try to compress a scene, you want to eliminate, sort of the less interesting parts. So again, I'll probably think of a wide crop. 16:7 will work here. And then I'm going to use this rule of thirds generally to kind of balance the scene. And the horizon is almost perfect. I think we just need just a little tilt that way. So this here, this scene is very, very heavy on the left side. Because when I think about balance, I try to think of the image on a scale, and if it would tilt one way or the other based on the exposure, like it's very dark and there's a lot of landmass over here, and there's very little over here. So this image kind of tilts to the left in terms of balance for me. Uh, but I'll see if I think a little tighter crop would work. I think if I get rid of this, I think we'll be okay. So maybe start there. Yeah, that feels better. So now this grass over here on the right side is kind of has a little more weight. And then this left side is still a little heavy, but I think the water now is more balanced because it comes right into the scene more. So I feel like this is a good balance. All right, so white balance wise, this overall scene and exposure is good, but I think it could be a little warmer. But I might, yeah, I mean, because these houses here are very kind of cool. So I might do just a global warming here. Again, about 500. So we're at 57. Let's go to 62. I think that's enough. So that feels a little better. And then let's do a control line for the sky. I'm going to bring the eyedropper up to the sky and tighten up the luma mask just a hair. And then add some clear view. Maybe pull the, let's try a little micro contrast and then pull the highlights a tiny bit. And some more contrast here. Right there. Okay, good. I might even just push the saturation on the blues a bit here and pull the luminance, stretch it out a bit. Okay, good. Uh, Now this is too cool, so I need to warm up. Oh, maybe a control line. Let's just kind of warm up the bottom of this scene a bit. Let's come up. Wow, I have to do quite a bit, but I think that looks better. All right, where's my eyedropper for this? Kind of want to hit the brighter areas. So, but let me back off the lumen mask just so it spreads. Let's try 10 points there. Okay. All right, that looks good. It's a little bit green. It needs a little magenta, maybe. Yeah, right about there. Okay. All right, so let's add a little dynamic range. So I'm gonna maybe push the waters a little darker and then kiss a little light on the sides here on the trees. Let me see what I can do with this water first. I just kind of go in here and around and just let's try some clear view and pull the blacks a little bit and then the shadows, midtones. Okay, that's good. And we'll just spread this a little more because it looks a little patchy. That's okay. I think that's still good. I'm gonna tighten up the chroma mask a bit, right about there. Okay. Okay, I like these red buoys. I want to highlight these, and I might come back to this grass over here. Let's start with these buoys. So I like to use the move zoom tool over here. Oh, you can't see it. This move zoom tool allows me to, when I'm cropped in this tight, I can use this box over here to get right to the areas that I want to concentrate on. So I'm gonna concentrate right on these red buoys. So let me get a new control point and get this a little smaller. I'm gonna tighten up the chroma, just 5 points there. And we'll work with these. I can make these smaller. And I'm trying to hit the mid-tone area of the buoys. Well, they're not buoys, but these little floating things. And then let's see if we can bring those out more. And then saturate them a bit more. I'll just do a global like that. Okay. All right, that's cool. All right, so let's kiss the landscape with a little light. So there's a little bit here. And I try to find where there's already a tiny bit of light in the scene, but I just want to uh like these rocks would be nice. And then a tiny bit there and there. Okay, so I'm gonna tighten up the Luma mask. Let's try 15 points. And then I'll start with the highlights. And then let's try some midtones. Okay, we're getting there. And maybe a touch in the shadow. And let's try regular contrast. There we go. Just to make the highlights and shadows pop a little more on those particular pieces. Let me get a little bit of a kiss in here. I think that's good. Maybe right there. How about this thing? This gazebo. No, that's too much. Okay. This is a little too bright, so I'm gonna just need to go back to that. maybe just move it a little bit. Yeah, that's better. A little bit of a kiss there. Just adjust it so it's not quite as strong. Okay, and maybe let's try a little white balance push. No, I like the greenish. Just just about 200 points there. All right, so okay, this water has got too much of a green tint, so I'm gonna go back to the water. I think it was this, yeah, it was this one. What if I pull just this back? Uh, let's put this at 0 and just pull this back a little bit cooler. So we were at 62. Let's try 57. Okay. All right. And then finally the grass here. I want to just give that a little kiss of light too. Probably use the same control point I used here. So let me get all the way over. I may not need to do them all, but I definitely want these to stand out more. Just to kind of balance the lighting a tiny bit. It's looking a little bit unnatural. I'm gonna squeeze these a little smaller. It's this one. I need to fix this one. This one's a little bit too hot. Just get rid of that. Okay, that's good. All right, so let's export this. So if you have any questions at this point, just leave them in the chat section now, because I'm going to visit the chat section and answer any questions you might have or go through your comments. All right, let's reset and compare. Okay, so here's my edit on the left. It feels a little bit too saturated. But here's the original on the right. I don't feel, let me do a split. Let me just see how it looks. Yeah, it's a little bit too contrasty. So let me go back. What I'm going to do is just do a global adjustment here. Maybe, let me just do a global pull on the contrast. Maybe a little bit less micro contrast. Okay. I think that feels better. Oh, yeah, that feels better. Okay. So, yeah, that's my edit. There's the original. And then as we go through, I think that works pretty well. So for me, this image, like I said, this whole foreground of grass, there's nothing there. Uh, so probably I would have walked up maybe 5 or 10 feet closer or got lower down to the ground so that the foreground is not so large. So I would just get down on my knees maybe or get waist level with the camera. Uh, and yeah, just a little kiss of light here on these rocks, I think helped a lot over here. I think that looks pretty good. So there's the final edit versus you know, the full size one. And then I'll just also mention again, this left side, this fence and this tractor, that added a little bit too much weight to the left side for me. So cropping that side off, we still have the rocks here on the mountainside or hillside, and then, you know, bringing the sky in. Okay, very nice shot. Let me just do a quick check on the chat section, make sure my audio and everything's still working. So I see Williams here. Larry, good to see you. And it's just clouds. Yeah, that I was getting that impression, but it almost looked like a volcano right on your shot. And it looks really good. Okay, thanks, Larry. I'm glad you liked how that looked. And Adam says, Black Friday it is. Try checking on that discount, Rob. Yeah, I will. Because I know you'd asked me about it last week. And unless my Capture One workflow kicks in for me, found my removal tool for free. Microsoft Copilot does it in Windows Paint. Oh, really? Interesting. I have to try that. Uh, and then Paul is asking, any tips for removing chromatic aberration that are still left after using the tool in the Details tab? So, uh, yeah, so it's tricky, but I'll show you a good example of that in 1 second. And then how does the Move Zoom toolbox work? Okay, so we'll do both of those. Let me just demo that real quick. Let me pull up an image that has, I know, really bad, like purple fringing, which is a chromatic aberration, right? One of the chromatic aberrations. So I think that's in my project folder. Let's see. When did I take these photos? It's not that one. Okay, it might be in this folder. Bear with me 1 second. Because it's a good question, right? Because the chromatic aberration tool sometimes leaves purple fringing behind, right? I think I found it. Hold on. Yeah. So there's F4, F4 again. Why are all these at F4? Let me check down here. 4, F4, F8. All right. F2.8, F2. All right. All right. So this is my 25 millimeter uh, Panasonic 25 millimeter f1.4, wide open. This is at f2, but even at f2, there's still like ton of this purple fringing, right? And if I apply, say, the optical corrections and noise reduction to it, you can still see it quite a bit. So let's go over to the, uh, I forget what that tab is called, the detail tab. And you can see I have, uh, you know, the auto selection. So I can just increase the size, increase the intensity, and that gets rid of most of it, right? But there's still some purplish color, and I've lost a lot of the color in the leaves and everything. So I guess, like, if we look at the leaves over here, the green is very faint, especially right in here, versus if I use the auto tool, you can see the greens are much richer. So sometimes pushing all of this too much can affect the colors of the entire image, right? Because green is another chromatic aberration, so it's seeing green in the image and reducing those, and that's why the green is getting softer. But green, yellow, orange, there's all kinds of chromatic aberration that the software looks for. But if you try and do too much, you can affect the image. So let's just back this off a little bit, and let's say if I increase this, no, I need to stay. I want to increase this, but not affect the greens. So, okay, so the greens haven't really been touched yet. Maybe about 135, but we still have a lot of purple fringing, right? So what I do is typically I'll just go to the eyedropper and then select this purplish color right in here, and you can adjust the radius. Like I don't want a dropper this big, right? So I'm going to use a smaller dropper, 4 or 5 pixels, and just select. Yeah, this is a very strong purple here. Now, because this image has fringing everywhere, all along the leaves and everywhere else, right? And it's kind of bled into the bluish area as well. I'm going to pull this back a little bit because there's no blue sky, but if there was, I don't want to affect that. So I'm just going to pull this back a little bit on the feathering. And I can do it globally. Like I can just kind of desaturate. And then let's zoom in and see how we did. Not quite. Yeah, I'll stretch this out a little more. There we go. So that got rid of most of it. There's still a little bit of red in here. Let me just feather it more. That didn't help. But that's most of it. Maybe go a little bit this way too. And that got rid of most of it, especially along the branches. And if we do side by side, I just want to kind of make sure that the overall color hasn't been affected. Because if there's purple and sort of bluish in the scene, that's going to get affected by using this. So you have another alternative uh, that I'll get to. But let's zoom in side by side so you can see. Yeah, it was this. So you can see the difference, right? Now, if I turn off the chromatic aberration tool completely, you can see just using the color correction was enough, right? I didn't even need to use this chromatic aberration tool. I assume that's the kind of aberration you're looking for. In fact, yeah, that looks pretty good right there. Okay, the move zoom tool. Let's go back to a single image. So if you look closely, there's a little white box inside here as I zoom in and out. It's a little hard to see on a busy scene like this. but there's a white outline box here that shows you what we're looking at here. So as I zoom in, you can see that box gets a little smaller, and then instead of doing like this and dragging around, I can just click on this white box with my mouse right over here and just move it to where I want to work on, like that. Okay, so let's say this scene had some blues and purples in it that were uh, getting affected by doing this kind of global adjustment on the colors, right? So let me reset this, and let's go in. Let me turn off the chromatic aberration. So we'll do as before. We'll select the same color using the dropper right in here. And then I'm going to stretch it just a little bit, but then we'll go to our local tool. And now what I can do is just use a control point, and I want to do the same thing, kind of select these purplish areas and just stretch this out and just hit the areas that are affected. And then do the same thing, just pull the saturation back. So let me stretch it out a little bit. And yeah, if we look here, I didn't quite get it. Let me stretch it out a bit more. So yeah, I would do something like that. So if we look at sort of the before and after, so now using the control points, I'm only affecting the chromatic aberration right here in this area rather than the entire image. And then I can just kind of go around and touch up different areas of the picture like this, um, and go around. Now this particular image is not an ideal way to remove the chromatic aberration. The way we did it the first time on a more global basis is the better approach. But depending on the image, like when I was editing the truck, right, earlier on in this stream, that didn't have any chromatic aberration, but it had potential for a lot of purple fringing because of if the chrome and stuff on that truck were brighter, I might have a problem there. And I could just go in with a local adjustment tool, like a control point, and fix the chromatic aberration directly on that one part and not affect the rest of the image just by using the color selection tool here. All right. So I hope that that answers the question. Um, so Paul said, I'm seeing quite a lot of C on my old film Canon FD lens also. Yeah, definitely. So that's how you do it. And sometimes I found that even though the chromatic aberration is showing, you have to zoom in at least 75, 80% before you see it on your screen being removed. So you always have to zoom in. If you zoom out, the chromatic aberration is going to show again. But if you zoom in, the tools will be applied. And they do that to speed up the overall editing process. And uh, but yeah, so I lost my train of thought. But hopefully that helped. Yeah, tons of CA, right? Yeah. Purple fringing, chromatic aberration, kind of this one, six of one, half the other, right? And then Paul says, thanks, Rob. Guess it's because they are manual lenses, no auto corrections are being done in the camera. Yeah, that's part of it. But as you can see, um, if we go back to, let's go back to the JPEG. This is the JPEG generated. You can see even in a JPEG, the camera did not remove it's a Panasonic lens, but Sometimes the chromatic aberrations aren't removed in camera either for the JPEGs. They're definitely not going to be removed on the raw image. Raw images don't get processed that way. Uh, it's they you get the raw image without lens corrections and chromatic aberration fixes, distortion correction. All of that is ignored when you're processing a raw file, at least in Photolab 8. I know in DX in Workspace and Lightroom, a lot of times they apply the corrections that the camera provides, but with DxO, it does not apply any corrections. It demosaics the image raw, to make it as pure as possible, and then it applies its own optical corrections and such. But that's anyway, you get the idea there. But yeah, older lenses, they have a lot of chromatic aberrations and purple fringing. So yeah, a lot of times you have to manually fix them in post processing. And I see Jeff Painter came in. Good to see you, Jeff. Always good to see you. All right, so let's go to the next image. And let me go back to, and referring to this 25 millimeter lens from Panasonic, the 1.4. I think this is one of the reasons Robin hates this lens. I don't know. I didn't watch his video on that lens, but I know this is definitely a problem. Is the chromatic aberrations on this lens wide open is pretty horrendous. Assuming you're shooting a scene that's really contrasty like that, because if you look at the non-contrasty areas, it's fine, right? But anyway, let's see, we're doing live streams today. All right, so next up we have a flower, and I forget what this flower is called, but I need to first download the optical module for it. So we have a Z7 II, oh nice, and a 300 f4. This is the PF. So with these PF lenses, you have to be careful of the background. So it looks like in this case, the background's not too busy, so you're okay. But a lot of times these PF lenses will give you very sort of soap bubbly kind of background when it's busy, but this background is very smooth and out of focus enough that it's not applicable here. But a lot of times when you're shooting birds that are very far away, you don't have that shallow depth of field that you normally have. And a lot of times these PF lenses can create a very busy background. Okay, so let's apply the basic preset now that I have it. Uh, let's just do a 1:1 crop and just come in tight. Again, I like to fill the frame. We'll look for a line to lead us into the frame, maybe right in here. I can even rotate this a bit just to give it a little more of an angle. Just come in tight. Its balance is a little bit off. Okay. Um, let's do some local adjustments here and see if we can temper some of the highlights a little bit. Because this is very, very contrasty because the sun is very strong. So let's just see if we can temper some of the highlights over here. I mean, I don't want a flat image. I like the dynamic range of the scene, but it's a little bit too strong. So I'm just trying to soften the highlights a little bit. Okay. All right, and then let's do another control point on these colors. And these are mostly like yellows and oranges. So let me see if I can just stretch this out. Just give them a little more punch. Okay. And then the purples. I'm not using the eyedropper method I showed earlier because these colors are pretty obvious. I can just saturate them. Oh, let's not mess with the luminance there. And then I'm going to add these yellows. Go back to the maybe a little more light, but I'm going to have to push the shadows a tiny bit in there. Okay. All right. And then let's try some micro contrast just to give it a little more crispiness in there. And then we'll do the same thing, but I want to do it on the purple areas. I'm going to tighten up the chroma mask, just 5 there. So I don't want it to spill into the green. Okay. And I'm going to add some micro contrast in there. Maybe a little push in the shadows just to soften it a bit again because the light is so harsh. I think that looks good. Okay, so let's darken the greens a little bit behind the flowers. I don't know if I should do a vignette. Let me just try a quick vignette. So I'm going to do a center control point, invert it, and turn the chroma and luma down to 0. And just pull the exposure in. It's not quite center. Okay, let's see where we're at. And let's go over here. Let's just add a little brightness. And we're done. Export that. All right, so here's the original, and here's my edit. It's very, very similar. Not much need to be done here, but I did want to kind of bring out sort of a little more detail in the, I guess, the petals, a little more crispiness to them. It's a little hard to tell probably on the stream. And then, of course, just a square crop. We don't need all of this background. And there's a little sensor spot here, but we crop that out. I think that looks pretty good. Okay. It's very, 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 very subtle difference, but there nonetheless. Okay, sorry. Let me I'm so exhausted. I had a photo job yesterday and I tired. Okay. Let's go back to the edit. Okay. Wow. That's cool. What the heck is this? Oh, it's just somebody's bags. So I think I'll crop out this bottom part and then balance. Hold on. Let me apply basic preset. Do I have the optics module loaded? Let me do that first. Okay. Let me just explore a couple of different compositions. I mean, I like this building here, but it's a little bit heavy in the scene. Yeah, it's a little bit heavy. So I think right in here with a reflection and just come in a little tighter. Do a perspective adjustment. Okay. And if I were to do a wide prop, maybe I can keep that. No, let's not keep that right building. Yeah, I don't like that. This is too messy over here on the left side. So let's try 5 by 4. Just come in. Okay, I like that. All right. Uh, go to our local adjustments. Let's see what we can do with the sky. So we'll just pull in a control line, tighten up the luma just a hair, and pull this in. Give it some clear view and micro contrast. I need to let me let me just work with the contrast a bit. I want a little more separation of the clouds. I guess that's good. How about white balance? Maybe a little tight, just a little bit of warmth there. Okay, we were at what, 57? Let's try 62. All right, that's good. And just get rid of the green a little bit too. All right. Now let's do the water. So I'm going to do a new control line right in here. And let's again do clear view, pull the blacks in, not that much. A little bit on the highlights and shift it maybe cooler or warmer. Let's see. No, let's try a little bit warmer again. So we'll go to about 62. Okay, well, 6,000. All right. I don't want the water to be too contrasty, so I'm gonna just pull the highlights in. What if I pull the contrast back? Just to keep it a little soft. All right, now, the buildings in the scene, I'm going to, oops, wow, that's a giant control point. Let me see, probably a chroma mask will tighten that up. Yeah. Let's add a little more warmth on the side there. And in here, here, over there, maybe even more. Okay. And some in here. Then we will push the shadows a bit. So let's make a new control point. Maybe I can get away with just pushing the highlights and the contrast. Okay. I might need to do this bottom area a little differently. Yeah, let me do I'm just going to work on these buildings a bit. That's good. A little kiss on top. A little kiss on top here. Okay, this foreground, I'm going to do, it's not really an architecture photo here in the foreground. It's more of a base. Let me warm up in there. Okay. All right, so I want the palm trees to have a little more brightness too. So I'm going to go in here, and just hit the palm trees up. Tighten the chroma mask, just maybe 5. Let's just brighten those up a bit and give them a little bit of warmth and some micro contrast, some regular contrast. Yeah, that looks good. I'm going to just push the highlights. That's a bit too much. Okay. Make these a little bigger. Not that one. Okay. How about these bushes? Yeah, I like that. I should probably do a new control point for these guys, but we'll just give it a little bit of a kiss here and there. Maybe there. Yeah, let me do a new one. Let's do a new control point. I don't want these to be quite as strong as the palm trees. Maybe we'll just use a very light brush. So I'm going to keep the flow and opacity down. Let's get a little smaller size and just kind of just brush in. Let's hit the beach too, since we're doing very small adjustments here. Just do a linear brightening and then push the highlights. Okay. How about this window? A little bit here. Let's erase a little bit off. Okay. Okay. Now I think trying to see if there's these buildings. This is kind of a red in the front. It's more of a brown. Let's see if we can just bring out that brown a little bit. I think it'll complement this green nicely. So let me go to the eyedropper and see what color I really get. Yeah, it's red. Okay. What if I do a global push like this? No, no, not good. Why is the side? Okay, let's not do that here. Let's do a local, and we'll do. I think a control line would be okay here, but I have to be really, really selective. So I'm going to select the reddest part and tighten up the chroma. Just pull this. Definitely tighten up the luma masking. And we'll bring this down. A little tighter on the luma. How about the chrome? Okay. Don't need to go quite that far. Okay, let's try pushing the reds. Oops. Okay. Yeah, that's better. It's very subtle, but I like it. Okay, the sky is a little bit dark. Let me go back to the sky. Uh, maybe not have so much. Just maybe actually instead of warmer, make it a little cooler and a little brighter. And then on a global basis, I want to, it's a little bit muted. So let me try just some vibrancy. Yeah, that looks good. Now the reds here are a little bit strong. So let me go back to this control point and get rid of that magenta. Yeah, I shouldn't have put magenta on these buildings. I think it looks better with a little less magenta and more yellow. Okay, I'm gonna call it there. Uh, export that and wait for that to export. All right, so here's the original on the right. I guess there's a couple of ways to think about the composition for me, right? The left side, I didn't like a whole lot. I like the trees here with the reflection, but then this parking lot with all these cars in it just kind of ruined it for me. So I could have just cropped in just over here if it was not for all these cars sitting in here. Uh, I don't like this distracting, like just empty bag here. I maybe you're trying to tell a story here. Uh, but I don't know. I didn't get it. Um, so I just went with a typical architectural type landscape scene. And this building is way too heavy. Again, when I'm talking about balance, like I talked about earlier, for me, I like the image to balance. And yeah, this was too much weight. All of these green trees, and especially this giant apartment or condo building. So that's why I went with this centered here. And I think this balance is a lot better. It's still a little bit heavy on the right side, but I didn't want to get the parking lot over here. And I think all of these nice little buildings here in the background just sort of balance out these two or three heavier buildings here. So visually, it works for me. So if we do just sort of a side by side, that's my edit. And of course, the white balance and colors are very subjective. Like it's still a little bit too green down here. I would probably shift that down or back a little bit. Uh, yeah, it's a little bit too much of a green tint here, but I would fix that. So there's the original. And then I think this makes for a much nice, cleaner image for me. Less is more, right? Okay. Um, let's see. We have one here from Paul. Oh, says fish just jumping out on its own. Looks like a carp. Wow, good timing, man. I mean, if there's a fishing line here, I don't see it. That's cool. Okay. So let's do I need an optics module? No, I got the optics module. So let's do a basic preset. And I don't know if a wide shot would work for this or not. That doesn't look right. And a square shot, okay. I like this except for this one little stick. I might brush this out. But okay, let's work with that. So what I want to do is try to emphasize the fish to stand out from the rest of this background, but I also like these ripples here leading into the fish. And I think I want to make this water, excuse me, a little more, make the water here a little more specular. So let me just try and darken the background because the fish is already illuminated about right. Let's see if I can just let me see if I can use a control line and just kind of just bring the exposure down a bit. Uh, and pick some of the darker spots here. Let's tighten up the chroma. Where's my where's my dropper on this? Let's go about there. Okay. Add another one up here. And just pull. This bottom one here is not doing exactly what I want. What if I got rid of that? Yeah, let me get rid of that one for now. I'm just gonna look it up here. Okay, a little more on the blacks. All right. Now for the water in the front, I think we have about the right luminance. So maybe we just need a little more contrast in there. Okay. Then let's make some speculars in here. So we'll do that and that. Maybe add a little bit of brightness. Not that much. Just a hair. Uh, yeah, that's good. And then how about some micro contrast? There we go. All right. The fish itself, just want to let me tighten up the chroma and luma a bit. Bring that out. Definitely just want to make the fish a little bit shinier. Uh, like that. A little push in the shadow of it. Yeah. Okay. And then let's do the eye separately. Just want to add a little bit more specular there. Let me tighten up the chrome and the luma. Okay. What some vibrancy? Not really. Okay. All right. And how about these water drops? Can I get in there? Yeah. See if I can. I mean, I'm using the same control point as the eyes. Maybe I need to do a separate one. I think we're good. All right. I'm gonna call it there. Uh, this one on the eye though is a little bit too strong. I'm gonna pull that in. Some speculars here. Just want to make sure you can see the water specks kind of going around. And with that said, I might be able to do a little tighter crop. Okay. Um, Maybe just a slight push. And we're good. So we'll compare this and reset. Okay, so yeah, there's a little goose back here or something, but yeah, I think that's a lot crispier. Um, that looks a lot better. So yeah, it's a little bit soft and low contrast, but over here now we can really see the textures on the scales or whatever these are, and the way the water's splashing around now is much clearer, especially up in here, and a few dots that I put over here. So if we do a split, there's the before and there's the after, and I think that came out pretty nice. And then Paul just reminded me, if you did an edit of your picture and want to compare it to my edit, now is a good time to send it in. And we'll look at your edits compared to what I did. I try not to look at your edits before I do the editing myself because I don't want to be kind of influenced by what you guys did. But but it's always fun to see your edits compared to mine. A lot of times your edits are even better. So because it's your image, right? You had a certain vision for it, and sometimes that shows in the editing, right? Exactly what you wanted to share. But okay, so let's do the next one here from J Rod. So it looks like a hawk or something here. Oh, this is a rough one. But we'll see what we can do. So let's apply. Let me make sure I got the optics modules. Let me just download this before I forget for this other one. Okay. So apply preset, and let's just crop square and come in front and center. Give the wingspan a little breathing room. And we got to try to separate this bird from the background. It's going to be tough. I don't know. Let me try a control line. I'm just going to drag the dropper around until I get something I think looks okay. Maybe right there. All right, let's see if we can light up this bird a little bit. And I'm gonna tighten up the luma just a bit, even though yeah, this is gonna be hard on the right side. All right, let's work with that. Spread that? No. Maybe get rid of that one. Okay, micro contrast, a little bit of clear view. Hmm, push the highlights. Ah, I think I made it worse. Okay, I'll be honest, I'm really struggling with this one. Let me try and give the beak a little more color. And then there's a little bit of a talon down here that's just needs to be pulled back a bit. Okay. All right, let me see where I'm at. Okay. This one, I don't know. Need to even that out a bit. Let's give it a little warmth. Okay. It's a little bit up here and here. All right, I'm gonna call it there. Uh, there's just not enough left of the bird, meaning the bird is really small in the frame because of the angle that we shot him at. We see very little of the wingspan, the body. It's just a little bit too straight on. So he blends in with the background really nicely, and I'm having a hard time separating him from the background. But I think that'll do. So let's export and reset. Okay, so here's the original. My thinking was either make the background brighter so this very dark bird stands out more against the background. But then I felt like that contrast would be a little bit hard on the eyes. So I decided to make the bird a little brighter and then make the background a little darker to kind of make it stand out. But the bird is very hard to see either way. So if I sort of do this, I think, gosh, the unedited looks better. Let me just try. Let me try something with this initial control line. If I did the opposite, this might be a better way to go. I'm just inverting the settings that I had before. Other than just a little bit of pull on the highlights. I think that's better. Going with a brighter background and making it darker made even harder to see this bird because it's so dark. So let's compare this. Yeah, I think that's the best I'm gonna do. So it's mainly in the crop here, minimizing all of the elements all the way around. Although I like this one tree, except for these leaves here kind of causing this blur. That this tree on the right, let me let me try one more thing. I'm sorry. I just want to explore maybe keeping this tree. Yeah, I like this too. So you could also go with this composition. This has a nice balance to it rather than doing front and center. Uh, this gives a little more context to the scene. I like this crop too. This one's really tough though. Hopefully you got a few shots of this bird closer to you, assuming he kept flying in a straight direction. But yeah, that's a tough shot. Okay, let's see. We have one here from Robert, and I think all we need to do is maybe get rid of this and maybe this line. I don't know if I can get rid of this one too much, but we'll try. But I like the vertical composition. I might just come in just a tiny bit just to get rid of these two real quick. See, maybe come in a little bit more on the left. And then, did I apply the preset yet? Yeah, I did. Okay. Uh, let's go in and just bring out the eyes and beak. Just so they're easier to see. Do it on the beak. Ooh, not the beak. Never mind. I don't think I can work on the beak too well. And then let's bring out the red a little bit down in here. So I'm going to pick red, stretch it into the yellows a bit, and just push it. Yeah, the luminance is fine. I do need to bring the highlights down a bit. Okay. And then for the rest of the bird, I think I'm going to use this auto masking tool. Let's see how that did. Oh, not bad. Okay. Not bad. So I'm going to bring in the micro contrast on this. Where is it here? And a little bit of a push. Okay. The background, I mean this empty negative space here, the only distracting element is kind of, let me make this brush a little bit larger. So I'll get rid of that. And then this one, I'm gonna have to use a smaller. Let me do a little bit larger first. And then before I get all the way down to the bird, I'm gonna make it smaller and just have a little more precision. Problem is when I use a small, tiny brush, a lot of times it won't blend quite as well. Yeah, that's not great. Let's see if I can get a little closer. Okay, good. And then a little bit closer. And then even closer. All right, good enough. Ah, no, that didn't work. I can still see it. So let me just get rid of this last one. Uh, okay. Uh, yeah, let's leave the stick there. I can't get it out without. I think that's good enough. All right. And then let me work on the greens a bit. So let's hit these greens, a little tighter chroma. Okay. And then let's back off the micro contrast a bit here. Just give the exposure a little more. Because I went back and I did this auto selection tool with micro contrast, so it's kind of doubling up a bit. We'll back that off. And then I think a global white balance shift to be a bit warmer, right around there. And then the rest of this water, I don't know. Let me just do a touch. I'm just gonna touch here and see. You know, like when you're cleaning laundry and you want to clean a spot, and they always say just try like an inconspicuous area first to see how this cleaner works, spot remover works. I kind of like to think of sometimes these control points. Yeah, I think what I need to do is let's tighten up the Luma mask just a hair. Let me see. In this area, if I just make it a little brighter, I think that looks good. I don't know about color. If I introduce a little warmth or coolness, I think cooler looks better to me. Just a little bit of cooling. And then at the bottom, you do kind of the same thing, but just go the opposite direction. And a tiny bit warmer. Just a hair. Okay. All right. I think I'm done. So let me just do a quick. Yeah. All right. Let's export this. And we'll compare, reset, and do a side by side. Uh, so yeah, this image on the right is ah, this is not looking great. I should have done a little better job with the gradation here, but maybe a control line would have been better instead of using control points. But in any case, yeah, I just need to get rid of these very minor distracting things like this over here, and then this stick was a little bit too long. I wish I could have got rid of it completely. It's tough to do though when you have this kind of, well, yeah, it's hard to do with Photolab. Hopefully they improve this tool in the future. But I like the dynamic tone of the water here going from brighter to darker. I would probably work this a little more so it's a little more natural looking, but you kind of get the idea. It's a little brighter, a little cooler in the top right. And as we get to the bottom right, a little darker, a little warmer, rather than sort of this completely flat background. And then bringing out the eye of the bird here, uh, if we look closely, you know, I always like eyes, beak, talons, right? When it comes to bird, uh, the eyes and the beak kind of work together here. I couldn't do much on the beak because it's not a different color anyway. Uh, but yeah, it's very important to make sure you can see the eyes of the creature, and then the micro contrast on the feathers, and then a little bit of saturation of the reds and yellow here. Also, the greens were a little bit flat, so I increased the saturation on the greens here. to give a little bit of compliment to the saturation I did in the red. Uh, but yeah, overall, um, I think it's a I think this came out pretty good. It's really hard to see on a stream because everything is kind of. I went with a very large crop. Normally, I like a very tight crop like this, but for some reason, I like the negative space on this image. So, other than the gradation, I should have done a better job there. I like this particular composition. All right, and then the last one, from Robin, and oh, I did this one last week. So, yeah, I remember this one. Yep, I did this one last week. So this is a do-over. So we don't need to see this one. Okay, so I think we're done. Let's look at your edits if you submitted them. Let me try and find them real quick. Almost there. Oh, Robin, wait a minute. Where's my Robin sent in his edit. Maybe I didn't do this last week, but it looks like I deleted everything from last week already, but I'm pretty sure I did this one. Uh, oh, there's a little carcass in here too. That's interesting. Maybe, dang it, I just deleted your image. I don't have another copy. But yeah, I like the very tight crop you did here. And considering how much, how little room or how few pixels the osprey took up in the image, you did a good job bringing out the details and the eyes. I swear I've done this image because this looks really familiar. But my bad if I didn't if I deleted your image prematurely. Um, okay, and then here's the oh, that's a nice edit, Paul. You kind of kept the luminance across the frame bright, but the crop is almost identical, right? And you did very similar edit here on the water. Of course, I think that's because your overall frame is brighter that the speculars are standing out. Let me look at mine again. You guys are not seeing anything. My bad. So I was looking at Robbins here, talking about the osprey. I swear I've done this image before, but it does maybe I did a very similar one. But like I said, I deleted everything, so I can't go back to it now. But okay, so on Paul's, what I was saying about Paul is basically your exposure, you did a global exposure brightening, and that's the key difference here. But you did pretty much the same thing with the contrast on the scales and the water speculars. That might be due to the brightening that you did partially, right? But it looks like you did some highlight adjustments here. But if we compare that to where's my edit? Yeah, this was my edit, right? And much darker versus where's where's Paul's much brighter. I think this is good. I would just warm it up a little bit. It's a little bit cool, or give it a little more saturation because it's a little muted for me. Because when you look at mine is much warmer and a little bit richer in the contrast, right? It's not that it's any better. It's just a different approach to the editing. This has a little more warmth and saturation versus this a little bit cooler but more detail. It's a little crispier, I think. So very, very nice. Um, and then let's see. I'm sorry for the back and forth. Oh, this is a new one from John. So, oh man, let me see. John, are you still here? You should find an image sent in this afternoon. Well, since you're still here, John, I'll go ahead and edit yours. Um, yeah, so Robin's confirming that I did do this last week. All right, thanks. Thanks, Robin. I thought I was going crazy. But okay, let me grab John's real quick. We'll do one more quick edit here. So I'm just gonna download this and we'll do one more. How am I doing on time? Oh wow, I'm over 2 hours. Man, time flies. I can't believe I've been at this for 2 hours. But I can do one more. Um, why didn't it go into the folder? Did it? I'm sorry, John. I'm checking. Yeah, it should be showing in here. Oh, here it is. Okay, got it. All right, let's do an edit here. So interesting. These plants are they alive? But it seems very deliberate. It's every other pot. Okay, so I think the lighting is pretty harsh here, but I think I'm thinking. Let me apply basic preset first. This one I need to. Okay, so there's not much in the sky, but I'm thinking I could transform this into a nighttime photo. Just doing some global adjustments. And then let's crop out. Let's go to about here. Mm, I'm not so sure. Uh, yeah, this is not going to work. But I think this composition is okay. I should probably come up a little higher. And then let's temper the brightness. over here. This is a hard one, John. Let's see if I can temper that a little bit. Okay. And then temper some of the highlights on the base. Let's do a little tighter luma. And then sorry, I'm thinking hard here. Uh hmm. Maybe get accentuate the reds in this. And then globally the greens. Uh, well, let's just back that off a bit. And then I want to get rid of this bluish tint on these pedestal things. So I'm going to go with this and let's just desaturate them and get the speculars out. A little more texture with micro contrast. Push the highlights a bit. The same thing on the bowls. And then let's temper the grass back here. Okay, then globally, I think just a tad more brightness. I want this to be a little brighter. Yeah, I don't need that last one. Okay, I think I'll call it there. I need a little, the overall color though, if I do this, no, I know John likes color, so I'm going to leave it in color. My editing is getting a little biased once I get to know you guys a little better. um, and the kind of pictures you send. But I mean, I need this to be a little bit punchier. maybe just a push this way, and then going back to this one, more of a pull. Oh, I desaturated these a bit too much. What if I just pull the blues out? Yeah, that's better. Okay. I need to temper this area a bit more. Okay. Uh, Man, this one thing. Okay, I'm gonna call it there. Uh, this was a tough one for me, and I'll talk about that here in a second. That's why I was so quiet. So I think compositionally, there's all this space on the left is not helping, and these broken branches and sticks. So we didn't really need this whole, this all of this. So I just decided to get rid of this too. So I just cropped in from this row also. And then if you look at the bottom left, I'm always conscious of my corners and what lines lead into the frame. And what would have been nice if there was somebody standing here or something right here that this line here could frame what's going on over here. But there's nothing there. And that's kind of what's missing for me in this photo is what is this leading or framing, or for me, it's framing because then you got all these shadows pointing into the frame also. So I feel like there needs to be something here. Uh, but other than that, I think we're fine. So if I just kind of roll over in terms of editing, outside of the composition, the natural unedited part is not bad as it is. The exposure is fine. It's very contrasty already. So in my edit, specifically, I wanted to amp up the reds and temper the greens a bit because as you can see from right here, it's very bright and it's sort of taking away from these guys. The grass is brighter than these little pedestals. So I tried to reverse that by making the pedestals somewhat brighter or at least equal to the grass in terms of overall luminance. As you can see how much, if I split it here, you can see how bright this is compared to the statue. So I did the opposite. I made the grass darker. And yeah, we just didn't need all this over here. And this one pillar is not adding anything to the scene that these other pillars don't. So I didn't see any reason to keep it anyway. If I could get rid of sort of the distraction in the background. So that's my thought process. And I think we're just about done. So let me pull up the chat again and And Robert, you like the edit? Great. I'm glad you like that. Maybe use the oh yeah, cloning brush would have been a little better, possibly. Uh, on that stick. But anyhow, and thanks again for the tips on removing. Oh, you're welcome, Paul. So yeah, CA is especially purple frame. Purple is the easiest to get rid of because it rarely do you take pictures of things do they have purple in them, right? But the other aberrations that some lenses give you, like I get oranges and yellow type aberrations. Those are even trickier because orange and reds and things. That's very common. Like our skin tones are primarily red, especially me. But there's a lot of reds in our skin tones and yellows, of course. So you have to be more careful with those kind of aberrations than the purple ones. The purple ones you can kind of just eyedropper and go around. But again, everybody, thanks so much for watching today. I know it's a long one today. I'm getting hungry, so I'm gonna go eat. But thanks so much for sending your images in. It's always a lot of fun to edit those. I'll be back again next week. I'm sorry for the short notice this week. I wasn't sure I was gonna be able to do it today because I was so tired when I got up this morning. And yesterday I knew I was all day at it. Anyway, I try to do these every Friday, best I can. But you can always use the links to submit your images anytime, and I'll get to them as soon as I can. So you guys have a great weekend, and I'll see you back probably Sunday for a normal photo chat.